When my husband cheated, it wasn't with a stranger. It was with my sister. For a moment, the world went still. Even the rain on the window forgot how to fall. My hands stayed wrapped around the coffee cup, its warmth already fading. I didn't scream, didn't cry, I just listened to the sound of my world breaking in silence. Loyalty used to feel like gravity, invisible, constant, something that held everything in place. But gravity shifts when someone decides to stop orbiting you. That was before I learned how quickly forever can start to fade. My husband Daniel and I had been together for nearly 10 years, the kind of marriage people described as steady, the quiet kind others envy but never understand. No chaos, no fireworks, just the comfort of routine. I thought stability was love. I thought predictability meant safety. I didn't realize it was just silence before the storm. My younger sister, Lila, was always part of that silence. 4 years younger, all spontaneity and sunshine, she'd call me her anchor. And I wore that proudly. We'd always been inseparable, two halves of a single heartbeat. When Daniel and I married, she didn't just stay close. She stayed inside our lives, dinners, weekend trips, random nights on the couch while I folded laundry, and she laughed with him like she'd always been there. It felt harmless, familiar, safe. I see it differently now. Comfort was just the disguise betrayal wore before it showed its face. Looking back, the cracks were whisper thin, but everywhere. Lila teasing Daniel about his routines, how he rinsed his glass before pouring wine, how he lined up his shirts by color. Harmless, I thought, until I saw her mirroring him. She started drinking his whiskey. She cut her hair the way he once said he liked mine. It wasn't imitation, it was rehearsal. And I kept telling myself, "You're imagining things, because it's easier to doubt your instincts than your family." Daniel began to drift, not enough to accuse, just enough to ache. He still kissed me goodnight, still brought me coffee in the mornings, but his warmth had calculation in it now. His laughter had weight. And when he looked at me, I could see the distance, the same distance that disappeared whenever he looked at Lila. It wasn't a love triangle, it was a slow erasure, and I was the one fading. One night, the three of us were watching a movie. I can't remember the plot, only the moment I looked over and saw them laughing at something I hadn't heard, their shoulders almost touching. Their laughter synced too perfectly. I felt like I was watching a scene I hadn't been cast in, right there in my own living room. I wasn't calm, I was surviving. That quiet wasn't strength, it was shelter. When the truth is too loud, survival sounds like silence. I started working late, stayed out more, told myself space was healthy, that maybe Daniel and I just needed to reconnect. Lila moved into an apartment a few blocks away, yet she was always at our house. She'd bring takeout, call it family time. Daniel never complained. I caught tiny fragments, her hand brushing his arm, his eyes following her when she left the room. I told myself, don't be paranoid, but deep down I already knew. Something sacred was being rewritten without my permission. The moment that broke the illusion came quietly. At a family barbecue, my mother pulled me aside. She asked if Daniel and I were okay. I smiled, told her we were fine. She nodded, slow and thoughtful, before adding, "Lila talks about him a lot lately. More than you do." Her words landed like a blade wrapped in concern. That night, I watched them, the refill of her glass before she asked, the way they avoided my eyes, the laughter that carried secrets. I wasn't losing them. They had already decided I was gone, but I didn't confront them. because I'd already realized something that changed everything. When people plot behind your back, they expect your explosion. They never expect calculation disguised as calm. They never expect quiet to mean strategy. People who steal what's yours expect you to collapse. They rehearse your rage, your breakdown, your begging. But they never imagine you'll answer betrayal with quiet precision. That's where I lived, in the quiet space between what they thought I'd do and what I actually did. It happened on a rainy Wednesday, the kind of day that carries a weight you can't name. I'd left work early with a headache, my only thought a warm bed and an hour of stillness. I hadn't called Daniel, I hadn't warned anyone. I wasn't looking for proof, but the truth has a way of waiting for the moment you least expect. When I opened the door, the house greeted me with a strange kind of stillness. No music, no television, just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint rhythm of laughter upstairs. Two voices, close, familiar. I froze. There's a kind of silence that isn't empty, it's performative, like the world holding its breath so you can hear your heart breaking. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. The bedroom door was cracked open, just enough for truth to slip through. Through that narrow slice of space, I saw Daniel sitting on the edge of our bed. Lila stood in front of him, close enough that their shadows merged. He was holding her wrist, gentle, intimate. She smiled down at him, not as my sister, but as something else entirely. Her voice was soft, almost giddy. "We don't have to keep pretending much longer." He looked up at her, pressed his forehead against her stomach, and whispered, "Soon." That single word hollowed me out. My knees went weak, but my body didn't fall. I remember gripping the doorframe, wood digging into my palms, just to keep from vanishing. I remember the light, soft, golden, the kind that makes everything look kinder than it is. Dust drifted through it, lazy and cruel, catching on the air between us, like proof suspended in sunlight. Somewhere downstairs, a clock ticked, slow, deliberate, mocking. I wondered how many lies could fit inside a single afternoon. How many times I'd mistaken noise for warmth. How many moments like this had already happened when I wasn't home to hear them. My body knew before my heart did. Something had ended. But endings don't sound like explosions. They sound like breath held too long. For a long moment, I couldn't move. My body stayed frozen in the doorway while my mind tried to reorder reality. Every sound felt magnified. The hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the tick of the clock, her laugh softening into a whisper. I waited for rage to come. It didn't. What came instead was clarity, sharp, surgical. I wasn't going to give them the performance they rehearsed in their heads. I turned away before the moment could see me break. Step by step, I walked down the stairs, careful not to let the floorboards betray me. The world felt heavier, but my heartbeat was steady. That was the first secret I ever kept from both of them. My silence started there, not as surrender, but as control. I didn't burst in. I didn't shout. I stepped back, slow, careful, until the floor stopped creaking beneath my feet. My heart was loud, but my footsteps weren't. I waited downstairs in the dark, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence between us. Every minute stretched thin. I heard her laugh once more, lighter now. And then the soft click of the front door. Only then did I move. I walked to the hallway mirror and saw myself, pale, still, and suddenly certain. The woman staring back wasn't broken. She was planning. I picked up my bag and left as if nothing had happened. They never knew I was there. I didn't go far, just drove until the streetlights thinned and the radio lost its signal. I parked outside a 24-hour diner, the kind that always smells like burnt coffee and old stories. I didn't go in. I just sat there, watching rain crawl down the windshield, one drop tracing the next until they blurred together. I thought about calling someone, anyone, but there was no one I trusted with this version of the truth. When the storm began to fade, I realized I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't crying either. I was just empty, and in that emptiness, there was room for something else to start. I drove home before sunrise, slipped into bed, and pretended to sleep. When Daniel kissed my forehead, the scent of her perfume still clung to him. That was how I knew I'd made the right choice. Silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was preparation. The next morning, I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. Not broken, just awake. I realized I had built my life on the belief that loyalty could protect me. But loyalty can't save you when it's only flowing one way. The humiliation wasn't loud, it was precise, a clean cut, a quiet bleed, but in that silence something new formed. Not rage, not revenge, clarity. I saw it clearly. There was nothing left to salvage, not a marriage, not a sisterhood, just me. So I stopped reacting. I started watching. I became a reflection, smiling when they lied, laughing when they pretended, mirroring back the illusion they thought I still believed in. Every polite nod, every fake dinner, every soft response, all of it was time I was buying. Because they thought their betrayal would shatter me. But they never realized I had already left long before I walked away. The day I stopped reacting was the day I started preparing. They thought my calm meant surrender, but it was strategy. I started collecting evidence like memories, quietly, methodically, financial records, screenshots, messages Daniel forgot to delete when he left his laptop open. I didn't rage, not one tear, just documented. Each file I printed was another thread I untied from the life they thought I'd never leave. One night, Daniel came downstairs while I was printing. The hum of the printer froze mid-page, my pulse syncing with it. I minimized the window so fast my fingers slipped on the mouse. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, his voice half yawn, half suspicion. "Just balancing bills," I said, forcing my tone flat, casual. He nodded, leaned down, and kissed my head. The warmth of it felt counterfeit, like counterfeit money that still spends. "Don't stay up too late," he murmured. Then his footsteps faded, slow and heavy, up the stairs. Only when the bedroom door closed did I release the breath I'd been holding. The paper slid out with a soft whir, her name in his inbox glowing on the screen. Proof printed in the dark. My hands shook until the printer light went out. Some nights I'd rehearse what I'd say if I ever decided to confront them. The words always started sharp and ended empty. How long? Why her? Was I that easy to replace? I'd mouth the questions in the dark like a ghost auditioning for a scene that would never be filmed. Because you can't reason with people who already rewrote the story. They've given your role to someone else. So I stopped rehearsing and started documenting. Anger is loud, strategy isn't. At night, my routines became armor. Phone in another room, keys in my purse, smile in place. Every morning, I showed up the same, steady, pleasant, predictable. Every night, I planned my freedom. The beauty of being underestimated is that no one sees your exit until the door closes behind you. Lila was the first to slip. At dinner one night, her mask cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but enough. She laughed, swirling her wine, and said lightly, "Maybe I should have married your husband." Daniel laughed too loud, too fast. I laughed last, looked her dead in the eye, and said, "Maybe you still will." For half a second, her face betrayed her. A flicker of fear, recognition. Then I smiled, took a sip of wine, and changed the subject like I hadn't just gutted her with grace. That was the moment I knew control isn't about holding on, it's about letting go first. I stopped fighting for my marriage, I let them have each other, and then I watched, not to see them win, but to see how fast they'd fall once I stopped holding the pieces together. I quit filling the gaps. If Daniel forgot the groceries, the fridge stayed empty. If Lila bailed on plans, I didn't follow up. I softened my edges, became a ghost in my own home, present, polite, untouchable. They noticed the difference, but neither dared to ask why. That silence told me everything I needed to know. Outwardly, nothing changed. I cooked, I smiled, I asked about their days, but inside I was gone, unanchored, floating toward something better. I started taking long evening walks, just clearing my head, I'd say. In truth, I was meeting with Janice, an attorney with a calm voice and razor-sharp eyes. I told her everything, the affair, the accounts, the quiet betrayal. She listened, then slid a folder across the table. "This will get you out clean," she said. "No drama, just proof and process." I carried that folder for days before opening it, a quiet promise folded in paper. Daniel didn't notice my distance. If anything, he looked lighter, confident now that I'd given up. He stayed out later, came home with excuses. One night, he texted at midnight, crashing at a friend's. I didn't reply. The next morning, I asked if he'd slept well. He hesitated, then nodded. That pause told me everything. Lila, on the other hand, started to fray. She'd show up uninvited, talking fast, probing for cracks. Daniel just needs someone who really understands him. "You've changed, you know," I smiled. "I hope so." She hated that. One afternoon, she stopped by. While Daniel was at work, she claimed she was just dropping something off, but her eyes moved like searchlights. "Where's Daniel?" she asked. "Out," I said, rinsing a glass that was already clean. She leaned against the counter, too casual. "You two okay? You seem distant lately." I smiled, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Marriage goes through seasons," I said. Her gaze flicked to the stack of mail on the table, too close to the folder I'd been hiding beneath it. For a split second, I thought she'd ask. Instead, she picked up a wine cork, spun it between her fingers, and said, "You always did like pretending everything's fine." My hand stilled on the glass. "You should know," I said softly, "I don't pretend anymore." Her smile faltered, just for a heartbeat. Then she laughed, too loud, too bright, and changed the subject. When she left, the air felt lighter, like the truth had brushed past us, and neither of us wanted to admit it. My grandmother's jewelry, old journals, childhood photos. One item at a time, I relocated pieces of my life to a storage unit, under another name, a new foundation they couldn't contaminate. At home, I staged peace. I made Daniel's lunches, hosted a birthday dinner for Lila, even baked her favorite lemon cake. She grinned across the table, believing she'd won. But later that night, after the candles were out and the plates were clean, I took off my wedding ring and placed it in a drawer. No tears, no speech, just a quiet truth. That ring didn't belong to me anymore, and neither did the woman who wore it. Freedom doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes in the quiet click of a pen, signing your own release. 2 weeks later, I signed the divorce papers, not out of anger, but precision. When you've been erased by someone else, the most powerful thing you can do is start erasing them back. I didn't file them right away. Timing mattered. I wanted every detail in place before I vanished completely. One call to HR. 10 years gone in 15 minutes. Just like that, his name vanished from every part of my life, and he never even noticed. That was the part that stung, not the betrayal, but the indifference. It wasn't heartbreak, it was the insult of being unnoticed. Indifference cuts deeper than betrayal, because it means they stopped seeing you long before they left you. It's a strong mid-script beat that deepens her clarity before the rebuilding phase. He'd already written me out of his story long before I ever left the room, so I started rewriting mine. Therapy became my confessional, not about him, not about her, but about the version of me who believed love meant endurance. I sat in silence for weeks before my therapist finally asked, "What are you still holding on to that's already gone?" Without thinking, I said, "Their potential." She smiled, soft, knowing. "That's not love," she said. "That's hope, and hope can wound deeper than hate." I carried those words like armor. By the time I was ready to leave, there was no heartbreak left, only clarity. Peace doesn't always look like healing. Sometimes it looks like walking away without needing a goodbye. One night, Daniel came home late again, smelling faintly of Lila's perfume. Citrus and jasmine, his favorite. He tossed his keys on the counter and muttered something about traffic. I asked if he wanted tea. He nodded. Chamomile, the one he liked. We sat in silence. No accusations, no explanations. Just the sound of two strangers pretending they hadn't already ended. After a long pause, he said, "You've been different lately." I smiled. "I know." He looked at me like he was trying to read a language he'd never learned. Then he said, "We should talk soon." I nodded, because by then I knew there was nothing left to say. When you've already made peace with leaving, words just sound like noise. I left on a Sunday, no symbolism, just silence. The quietest day of the week. Daniel was out golfing. Lila was posting about her self-care spa day. That was my window. I took it. The night before, I'd packed everything that mattered. My clothes, my keepsakes, my peace. I left behind the things that only had meaning inside that house. The photos, the couch, the anniversary glasses. They could have the symbols. I was taking the substance. On the kitchen table, I left a letter. 5 lines. "Daniel, you don't owe me an explanation. And I won't be giving you one. I've already filed. Everything you need is in the folder. You're free now. Take care of yourself. L. News." No forwarding address, just a P.O. box for legal formality. I walked out without looking back, because when you finally choose yourself, you don't need witnesses, only distance. The air outside hit colder than I expected. My fingers trembled on the car keys, not from fear, but release. Freedom didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like exhaling after years of holding my breath. By noon, the last ties were gone. Keys turned in, storage locked, a small apartment waiting across town. Temporary, clean, mine. It wasn't escape. It was return to myself. That evening, my phone lit up. "We need to talk." "Daniel," I didn't answer. An hour later, Lila called. Twice. Then a message. "What the hell is going on? Daniel's freaking out." "You could have said something," I smiled. That night, I poured a glass of wine and took my first real breath in months. The quiet didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. My silence wasn't a weapon. It was release. It had become something softer. the sound of a life no longer waiting to be understood. 2 days later, my attorney filed the paperwork. Because I'd done my work, every statement, every text, every trace. I wasn't seeking revenge, I was seeking fairness. And I got it. Daniel tried to negotiate, long rambling emails full of excuses, half apologies, and the occasional insult wrapped in regret. Then came silence. I think it scared him, not my anger, but the absence of it. He expected a storm, instead he got a ghost. Lila unraveled faster. My parents called, their voices thick with confusion. I told them I needed time, that I wasn't ready to talk. My mother hesitated. But Lila said, I stopped her gently. She says a lot of things. Maybe ask her about that. They didn't ask again. Sometimes you don't have to defend yourself. The truth handles that for you. Eventually, word got out. Small towns always do the work for you. I never told anyone what I saw or what I knew. I didn't need to. Their actions spoke louder than anything I could have said. And when you don't fight the lies, people start wondering why. A month later, the final papers arrived. Divorced, 1, clean. I took my time rebuilding, new job, new apartment, new quiet. Yoga became a ritual, not for balance, but for stillness. The kind that doesn't ask you to explain yourself. I started cooking again, learning what I liked without compromise. My laughter came back slowly, like a muscle remembering its purpose. A few weeks after the divorce, Lila messaged me. So that's it? You're just gone? I didn't respond. She followed it with a voice note I never opened. Then silence. And in that silence, I heard what I'd been waiting for all along, their world starting to crack. Because you can't build a life out of betrayal and expect it to stand, I didn't need to look for updates. They found me, carried on the wind of gossip and guilt. When you walk away clean, their mess finds its way back to you on its own. Through the grapevine, I heard things. They'd moved in together, briefly. Then came the cracks, money, jealousy, control. Daniel accused her of being manipulative. Lila accused him of using her. The family stopped calling, friends stopped showing up. Their picture-perfect fantasy began to rot under the weight of real life. And through it all, I stayed exactly where I wanted to be. Unseen, unreachable, free. They had each other, and nothing else. I didn't have to lift a finger. Their downfall wasn't cinematic. No screaming, no grand finales. It was slower than that, quieter, like a house settling unevenly until the walls begin to whisper their warning. 5 months. That's how long they lasted. At first, they tried to make it look like love. Curated Instagram posts, dinner photos, captions about fate and finding each other. But the comments told the real story. Short, polite, hesitant. Friends unsure what to say. Family saying nothing at all. Because people never forget how something starts, especially when it begins in shadows. Then came the unraveling. I was told Lila started to change, restless, suspicious. She checked his phone, questioned his late nights, accused him of things she couldn't prove but could feel. That part made me smile, not cruelly, just knowingly. She was finally living with the version of Daniel I'd already survived in silence. But Lila wasn't built for silence. She needed noise, attention, validation, constant reassurance. Daniel wasn't built for truth. He craved comfort, not confrontation. She couldn't control him. He couldn't calm her. They both wanted to be adored. Neither knew how to give it, so they crumbled. One day, a message arrived from a mutual friend, a screenshot. Lila had posted something cryptic. Some lessons hit harder when you deserve them. No caption, no context. I didn't ask, didn't reply. A week later, Daniel emailed me. Not about the divorce, that was long over. Just a hollow message dressed like closure. I don't expect you to respond. I just wanted you to know. I understand now. I should have done things differently. I read it twice, not because it hurt, but because it amazed me how little he still understood. It was never about the cheating. It was about the decay before it, the small betrayals, the neglect, the moments he opened the door for her and closed it on me. He'd set the fire and acted shocked when the flames reached him. I didn't need to reply. Some stories don't need closure, they only need distance. They say karma is patient, but peace is faster. By the time their world fell apart, mine had already begun. Their chaos became my closure. The last I heard, Daniel had moved back into his parents' house for a while. Lila took a job in another city, quieter feeds, thinner smiles, long captions about healing and growth. And in the middle of their noise, I found something they'd never touch again: my stillness. I started to travel, not far, just far enough to feel unknown again. A quiet mountain town for 3 days, books, black coffee, and the kind of silence that felt like luxury. I went to the movies alone, fixed what broke, learned how to change my own oil, hang my own shelves, exist without explanation. Each small act was a declaration. I'm not lonely, I'm free. I stopped apologizing for being happy by myself. Almost a year after I walked away, her name lit up my phone. Lila. The message was simple. I know you probably hate me, but I miss you. No punctuation, no apology, just emptiness, trying to sound sentimental. I stared at it, not out of longing, but recognition. The same way you might recognize a place you once lived, but would never go back to. I didn't block her, didn't delete it, didn't reply, just left it there. Read finished. Because the truth is, revenge doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it looks like quiet peace, like breathing easily in the same world where they can't. The best revenge isn't payback, it's inaccessibility. I became someone they could no longer reach, not emotionally, not physically, not spiritually, while they became exactly what they'd always been. 2 restless souls trying to fill the silence I made sacred. I never wanted them to suffer. I just wanted to stop suffering for them. Healing didn't arrive with fireworks or closure. It came quietly, like sunlight spilling across a cold floor. One day, I simply realized I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. I wasn't checking my phone. I wasn't replaying conversations. I wasn't angry. I was just free. That was the part no one warns you about. How peace doesn't shout when it shows up. It just takes your hand and reminds you you've survived. The betrayal stopped mattering. The silence stopped hurting. Even their unraveling became background noise. Because what stayed, what lasted, was me. The stillness. The quiet strength that came when I stopped chasing justice and started choosing peace. When people asked what happened, I never told the story. I'd just say, it didn't work out. And that was enough. The truth didn't need witnesses. It lived in how I carried myself, calm, certain, unbothered. My therapist once said, the people who hurt you already know what they did. You don't heal by reminding them. You heal by refusing to be reduced by it. She was right. I still see traces of them sometimes. A song Daniel used to play on Sunday mornings. A perfume that smells like Lila's favorite. Sometimes I flinch, sometimes I smile, but I never miss them. Because the woman they betrayed doesn't exist anymore. In her place is someone sharper, softer, and far less willing to bleed for people who hand her the knife. Now my life is small but full, a sunlit apartment, thriving plants, shelves lined with stories that mirror my own. I cook slowly. I walk freely. I live without explaining where I'm going. I'm not lonely. I'm alone. There's a difference. People still ask if I'd ever speak to Lila again or respond to Daniel's apology. I always answer the same way. I don't hate them. I just don't owe them anything anymore. That's the truth about walking away. It's not about slamming the door. It's about not hearing the knock when they come back. Some betrayals are too deliberate to forgive, and forgiveness doesn't always mean letting them in. Sometimes it just means you stop looking through the peephole. Months later, I saw them again at my parents' anniversary dinner. They arrived late, hand in hand, but already out of sync. The room went still for a moment, not in shock, but in recognition. People smiled politely, then turned back to their conversations. My mother handed me the first slice of cake. Lila looked at me then, just once, eyes searching for a softness I no longer owed her. I held her gaze long enough for her to understand. There was nothing left to take. Daniel cleared his throat, said something about traffic. No one replied. For the first time, the silence in that room didn't belong to me. It belonged to them. And it was louder than anything I could have said. A few weeks ago, I saw Lila's old message again, still sitting there, unread. I know you probably hate me, but I miss you. I opened it, read it once, then set my phone down. No reply, no block, just peace. Peace didn't come to erase what they did. It came to remind me I never needed to match their chaos to end it. In the end, I didn't rise from the ashes. I simply stepped out of the fire and let it burn without me. And in the stillness that followed, I realized revenge was never the act. It was the becoming. Because silence, when it's chosen, echoes louder than any confession ever could. Some silences end stories. Others are just the breath before the next one begins. The kettle whistles in the background. I turn it off, pour tea, and sit by the open window. The ceramic is warm against my palms. Outside, the rain has finally stopped. Puddles glitter like small mirrors in the streetlight. The wind moves the curtains, soft and forgiving. I close my eyes, exhale, and let the steam rise across my face. For the first time in years, the house sounds like peace. My coffee cup sits beside me, this time warm.